Toy making is a long and honored tradition, usually involving elderly men wearing stockings, hunched over wooden benches, making toys that look like they came from the 18th century. And while this may be the stereotype of toy making, it's not actually how it works. It's a modern production. And been lucky to be in toy making, which is why I started this channel to answer questions about how toys get made. And as a collector myself, I have opinions. But as a toy maker, I have facts. So I try to put them together because honestly, while you can be a lifelong collector, experience does matter. And actually, physically having worked in toys tends to be the way you have information. Well, not every question can honestly just be answered black and white. There are some that are completely opinionated. And one of those is capes. Everyone is always asking about capes on action figures because, well, most action figures, well, not most, but a lot wear capes. Whether they're superheroes or barbarians or, just people who want to look stylish. Capes tend to be a big, big accessory on modern toys and on vintage toys. And there's a lot of opinions about whether capes should be made out of a uniform material, whether it should be up to the individual figure, how it looks best. And, well, it tends to be a hotly debated topic and one that really has a tough answer.
So with a man in a cape.
Well, it is good cape weather, cool, breezy.
So to start off, let's just kind of go through the different type of capes that you get with action figures and how they're made. So the most common one is the plastic cape, or PVC, which is a type of plastic, as opposed to ABS, which is the plastic that the bodies are usually made out of. And it does require a second tool, usually, because you have to run two different types of plastic, one with the cape tool and one with the body. So logistically and from a tooling perspective, it can be a bit more expensive, but from a production standpoint, it's pretty easy because you're just kind of snapping plastic around a figure. Now, another kind of cape that isn't as common, but used to be more so, is the vinyl cape. So vinyl is not quite soft goods, not quite fabric, but it's vinyl. It's you probably know it best from Star Wars, from the old line in the '80s when the characters wore vinyl capes. That's what the material is. It's very inexpensive to work with. It holds its shape very well. It doesn't tear that easily, but it can. And it tended to be a real go-to material in sort of, I guess you could call, early toy making, if you consider this, the modern age. Then, of course, there is soft goods, or fabric. Soft goods is the technical industry term for any time a character has fabric that is incorporated on them, whether it's an entire outfit like Amigo or just a cape. Then, of course, there's the hybrid version, which is the fabric cape that has a wire that is run through the edges, allowing you to actually pose the cape itself. Now, personally, this is a very dynamic way to do a cape, but it's also very expensive. It's by far the most expensive way to pull that off from a production standpoint. But a lot of fans prefer it. And there's a lot of customizers out there who will get figures that have PVC capes and will say, hey, this is not the way I want my figure displayed, and they will make their own, or they'll order one from the internet. There's no shortage on Etsy and YouTube of capes with wires that run through them. And when looking at the history of action figures, one of the things that's really noticeable is, well, lack of consistency, you could say. The same figure has been made over again with having a plastic PVC cape and having a soft goods cape. It's really, the same figure and the same outfit done years apart sometimes, but whether or not it's an evolution from plastic to fabric or whether it's just a different execution is really what I want to talk about, and the rationale for why toy companies will make these kind of choices. Which one is better? Is there actually an answer? Is there a type of cape that is better from a production standpoint, from a consumer standpoint? Well, the short answer is there's disadvantages and advantages.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion.
And yes, I know I'm painting myself into a box by saying that, but from a cost standpoint, from a production, from a toy manufacturer, the cost, except unless you're doing a wire cape, which is significantly more expensive, they're pretty much all equal. if you're doing soft goods or you're doing PVC, they really are comparable as far as the cost. But to a consumer, there is a perceived value that fabric adds significantly, and this has been found through actual studies over and over again. And everyone in any kind of production company likes to follow spreadsheets and studies and data because it helps justify decisions. So, as a perfect example, the vintage Star Wars line had a Jawa with a vinyl cape, the one on the left, and it was changed during production, what's called a running change, to soft goods. This was because the Jawa was seen as a less valuable figure in the eyes of the consumer. Kenner found back in the day that when consumers were looking at all the figures to buy, the Jawa was looked at as not worth the same amount of money as another figure, a larger figure. So he was updated, Jawas have gender, from a vinyl cape there to the soft goods, and this is why the vinyl cape one tends to be so expensive on the aftermarket, because it didn't last that long, it was changed, and why you can buy replacement vinyl capes for your Jawa. In fact, it's become a whole controversy, and there's whole videos, like you can see on Junkman's channel, about how to spot a fake vinyl cape Jawa, because, again, they go for a lot of money since they were only on the market for a while before being changed. So back to the whole cape with the metal through it, that allows it to articulate. If I was going to go with a personal choice, I think that these type of capes are amazing, but you don't see them with that many action figures simply because it's expensive to do. You're more or less running a piece of bendable wire through the fabric and then sewing it closed. So there's labor, there's material. It's significantly more expensive than just having a PVC cape, a vinyl cape, or a soft goods cape. Do they look cool on shelf? Absolutely. And that tends to be one of the reasons why customizers go to this a lot. You really see it the most with people who work on and design their own figures. You can see a lot of tutorials online about how to do this. It's more or less, taking two pieces of fabric, sewing them together, and running a metal rod, a bendable rod, through it. You can get it at Home Depot, but yeah, it does significantly make figures more attractive, especially, posed on shelf when especially for characters where the cape is a character itself and, is alive. Wouldn't you love to see, like, Doctor Strange's cape versus the carpet from Aladdin? Anyway, all right. So where do I personally stand on this, both as a toy collector and a toy maker? Well, really, at the end of the day, it's consistency. I like them both. I think they both have advantages, and we'll go through some of them in a quick moment. But I personally think that every figure in a line should look uniform, which is why when I ran Masters of the Universe Classics, every figure had a PVC cape. Even characters that, say, in the vintage line, had a soft goods cape, like Scareglow here. And that was because he was done as a quick fix figure to ship more characters back in the day, because all he needed was a new head and soft goods, which it doesn't require tooling, but obviously it requires purchasing the soft goods. When we did Scareglow in Classics, I was very insistent that he have a PVC cape to fit in with all the others. And, that met with some resistance from fans who wanted to see a cloth cape, like the vintage figure. But for me, I wanted the line to have consistency. It was very important. And, whether you agree with me or not, that was really a driving factor behind a lot of lines I ran. The closest I think we got to quote-unquote soft goods was Natasha, who had, a netted cape, but it was still made out of PVC. It was still that bendy plastic, as opposed to, again, ABS, which is what the bodies are made of. It's a more rigid plastic. So, you can't make the cape out of ABS. It won't, otherwise it doesn't really, flow at all. Now, a major disadvantage to having PVC capes is that figures can't sit. And figures that should be in thrones, yeah, that can be a big issue. You have to remove the cape. And sometimes it's cool to see, the cape draping over the throne. And there are advantages to having soft goods. While the Keldor from 2002 stood out as one of the only figures in the 2002 line to have soft goods on him, it allowed him to do things like sit in a throne, or achieve other poses that you can't otherwise do. Emperor Palpatine, another great example. When the Black Series figure came out, made total sense that he was going to have soft goods because, well, he came with his own chair. And, he's the guy in the chair, right? Or, is he? But he's kind of the leader. I don't know. Can the leader be in the chair? Either way, Palpatine with soft goods is what allows usually for him to, sit in the chair and actually be able to pose with the legs, in proper formation, if you will. The recent Vintage series also issued a deluxe version from Hasbro Pulse. Now, one of my all-time favorite Star Wars figures is the Palpatine that came out in the Jedi Duel set in one of the cinema scenes, I think from 96-ish, because this Palpatine was actually sculpted to sit in the chair. Like, he doesn't work outside the chair, but he doesn't need to, because there's also Palpatines in the line that were in walking poses. And I've almost never seen this before in any other action figure, where a figure was sculpted. So there's no soft goods at all, and there's no PVC. It's just plastic sculpt. In fact, I like this figure so much that it's the only figure in my entire Star Wars collection where I cut the figure off of the base because I wanted the chair. I used wire cutters to actually cut through the plastic and then painted the base black so that it would match, so that I could display the figure in his chair on my shelf. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's one of the reasons I like it so much. It's so unique. You just don't see figures actually sculpted in a sitting pose with their, cape flowing over the armrests. Another good example, going from the Emperor to the Emperor's Royal Guard, well, in the vintage line, or the retro line, the Kenner line, I don't know what we call it these days because everything gets, now there's a modern version. But the Kenner line, the Royal Guard had soft goods. But a lot of the modern Royal Guards have just used PVC as the cloak, cape, whatever you're going to, I guess, the robes. They're robes. I think, honestly, the best Royal Guard ever just did this, versus some of the modern ones that do use soft goods, I think tend to look bulky and don't, hold their weapons as well, and I think are actually inferior figures. So soft goods can kind of, I don't want to say ruin a figure, but, lead to it not being as good as it can be. So sticking with the whole Royal Guard thing, but jumping from the Vintage series or the 3 3/4 to the 6-inch Star Wars line, again, 6-inch line here with the Royal Guard using soft goods, and the figure looks really nice. When the bigger the figure, the more soft goods tend to work. And the thing with Black Series, though, is the inconsistency. So there are a lot of figures that use soft goods for capes and cloaks and hoods and all sorts of things. The Emperor, the Emperor's Guard, Rey here, if you will. But there are also figures in the same line in the Black Series that have plastic capes. So, here's Lando back again, going back and forth, but this time in 6-inch, he gets a plastic cape. So that's what I mean by consistency. Some figures in the Black Series line have PVC cape parts, like Darth Maul here. Other figures that, Darth Maul's a Sith Lord, right? Well, another Sith Lord, Darth Vader, now, well, when you go to him, he actually has soft goods. So that's exactly what I mean by consistency. I kind of feel like choose one and go with it. I do think that again, the bigger the figure, the more soft goods do work. I mean, in 12-inch, soft goods work really well because then you're kind of like in doll phase, if you will. And it's one of the reasons I like Marvel Legends so much, because Marvel Legends is 100% PVC capes. There are no soft goods at all. I can't think of any Marvel Legends figures that have soft goods. And I really like that. I appreciate that because as a, anal retentive collector, I like my collection to be uniform. I like all the characters to be the same. And, I kind of wish Black Series, I get why they use soft goods, but I kind of wish they all had soft goods, like, again, DC Universe Classics. All the figures used PVC capes, and, no matter who it was, there was consistency there. So when I consult with companies, as, through Spector Creative, my company, I tell them, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Pick one. Pick one and stick with it, because it helps make a line uniform, which absolutely leads not only to trust, but customer loyalty. And I think that's a big thing, is having consistency over a long period of time, so figures that came out 10 years ago can hang out with figures that came out today. What do you guys think? What do you prefer? Do you prefer soft goods? Do you prefer plastic? Do you prefer vinyl? What kind of capes do you like on your action figures? Do you customize any of them to give them, even better capes than the company provides? Let me know in the comments below. Let's discuss. Thanks so much for watching. Share this video. It all helps the algorithm. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.